Norway, it's a land of breathtaking fjords, deep blue waters cutting through towering cliffs. Today it's known for peace, for prosperity, for a very high quality of life. But picture this, go back 1,000 years. The name Norway conjured very different images. It meant fierce Viking warriors, long ships slicing through icy seas, raiders striking fear across Europe. It's quite a transformation, isn't it? From some of the most feared people on Earth, to a nation that often tops lists for happiness and global cooperation. This dramatic journey is what makes Norway so fascinating to explore. This small nation tucked away in Europe's far north has a truly epic story. It's a tale of hardy people shaped by a rugged, often unforgiving landscape. They have faced harsh climates and powerful neighbors. They have known poverty and foreign domination. Yet they have emerged as one of the wealthiest, most stable societies in the world. It's a journey from those fearsome Viking seafarers to becoming pioneers of social welfare and champions of international peace. How did they do it? That's the incredible story I want to share with you today. We'll travel through time together. We'll start with the legendary Viking Age, exploring their voyages, their settlements, and their eventual shift towards Christianity. Then we'll navigate medieval Norway, a new kingdom finding its feet only to spend centuries under Danish rule. We will see how the spirit of Norway began to reawaken, leading to a determined yet peaceful fight for its own independence in the 19th and early 20th centuries. It's a story of resilience, of holding on to an identity against the odds. This path was rarely easy. Then we'll face the dark days of World War II. The Nazi occupation tested Norway to its limits, but it also forged an incredible spirit of resistance. And after the war, a surprising discovery changed everything. Oil, found deep beneath the North Sea in 1969. This black gold didn't just bring wealth, it was managed with remarkable foresight, paving the way for the modern Norway we see, a country that tries to balance its prosperity with global responsibility. Norway's journey is more than just history. It's an inspiring lesson in how a nation can adapt, endure, and continually redefine its place in the world. The Viking Age. It roughly spans from the late 8th to the mid-11th century. It was a time when Norsemen burst out of Scandinavia. Their impact was felt far and wide. These weren't just mindless barbarians, as they're sometimes painted. They were incredible seafarers, master shipbuilders. Their longships were marvels of technology for their time, light, strong, and able to navigate both open oceans and shallow rivers. These ships carried them to new lands, driven by a mix of ambition, overpopulation at home, and a thirst for adventure, or perhaps treasure. Their voyages were legendary, and often terrifying for those they encountered. Viking raids targeted monasteries and towns along the coasts of Britain, France, and beyond. They were looking for silver, gold, and slaves, but they were also explorers and traders. They settled in many places. They founded cities like Dublin in Ireland. They left their mark on Normandy in France. They sailed west across the vast Atlantic, establishing settlements in Iceland and Greenland. Leif Erikson, a true Norse hero, even reached North America around the year 1000, 5 centuries before Columbus. That's quite something. Viking society itself was complex. They had a rich culture and a unique belief system. Think of Odin the All-Father, Thor with his mighty hammer. These gods in epic sagas shaped their worldview. They were skilled craftsmen working with wood, metal, and stone. They had laws and social structures like the Thing, an early form of parliament. While their raids were brutal, their settlements often led to trade and cultural exchange. They were farmers and merchants too, not just warriors with horned helmets, which, by the way, is mostly a myth. They didn't actually wear them. The Viking Age didn't last forever. A major turning point was the gradual conversion to Christianity. Figures like King Olaf Haraldsson, later Saint Olaf, played a key role around the early 11th century. He worked to unify Norway under one crown and one faith. This process wasn't always peaceful, but it slowly changed the fabric of Norse society. By around 1066, often marked by the Norman conquest of England, the great age of Viking expansion was drawing to a close. A new chapter was beginning for Norway, one where it would become a kingdom in its own right. As the Viking Age faded, Norway began to shape itself into a more unified Christian kingdom. The influence of the church grew immensely. Magnificent stone churches and cathedrals started to rise across the land. The most famous is Nidaros Cathedral in Trondheim, built over the burial site of St. Olaf. It became a major pilgrimage site in northern Europe. This period, from the 11th to the 14th centuries, saw Norway consolidate its territory, including lands like Iceland, Greenland, and parts of Scotland. It was a time of nation-building under a Norwegian crown. However, this medieval period wasn't always smooth sailing. There were internal power struggles. Civil wars raged for nearly a century between different factions vying for the throne. Eventually, the country did find more stability, under rulers like King Haakon IV Håkonsson in the 13th century. His reign is sometimes seen as a golden age for medieval Norway. Trade flourished, particularly with the Hanseatic League. Art and literature developed. The kingdom felt relatively strong and independent, but challenging times were on the horizon for this northern realm. A shadow was beginning to fall across its future. A devastating blow came in the mid-14th century, the Black Death. This terrible plague swept across Europe, and Norway was hit incredibly hard. Perhaps half its population perished. This catastrophe severely weakened the kingdom. It lost manpower, resources, and political strength. This vulnerability made it harder to stand alone. In 1397, Norway entered the Kalmar Union. This brought Norway, Denmark, and Sweden under a single monarch. Queen Margaret I of Denmark was the driving force. Initially, it was meant to be a union of equals, but that's not quite how it turned out for Norway. For over 400 years, Norway found itself increasingly dominated by Denmark. The Kalmar Union eventually dissolved for Sweden, but Norway remained tied to the Danish crown. Copenhagen became the center of power. Norwegian institutions often withered. The Old Norwegian language lost ground to Danish. The country's rich resources, like timber and fish, often benefited Denmark more than Norway itself. While Norwegian identity was never completely extinguished, it was a long period of being the junior partner. A quiet yearning for greater autonomy simmered beneath the surface, waiting for its moment. This long Danish chapter profoundly shaped Norway. The early 19th century brought massive changes to Europe. The Napoleonic Wars redrew the map. Denmark-Norway had sided with Napoleon, and when Napoleon was defeated, Denmark paid a heavy price. At the Treaty of Kiel in January 1814, Denmark was forced to cede Norway to Sweden. Sweden had been on the winning side. For Norwegians, this was a shock, to be handed over from one ruler to another like a piece of property. This sparked a remarkable, albeit brief, moment of defiance and national assertion. They weren't going to accept this passively. In the spring of 1814, a group of Norwegian representatives gathered at a place called Eidsvoll. They were determined to take matters into their own hands. In an astonishingly short time, they drafted a new constitution for Norway. It was one of the most liberal and democratic constitutions in Europe at the time. They declared Norway an independent nation, and they elected the Danish prince, Christian Frederick, as their king. This burst of independence was short-lived. Sweden, backed by the great powers of Europe, wasn't going to let Norway slip away so easily. A brief war followed. Norway was forced into a personal union with Sweden. The Swedish king became Norway's king too. But crucially, Norway was allowed to keep its new constitution. With some modifications, it retained a significant degree of self-government. This was a vital foundation for the future. Throughout the 19th century, a powerful sense of Norwegian nationalism grew. There was a cultural renaissance. Writers like Henrik Ibsen brought Norwegian drama to the world stage. Composers like Edvard Grieg created music filled with the spirit of Norwegian folk traditions. The Norwegian language was revived and standardized. This growing national consciousness eventually led to calls for full independence. Tensions with Sweden grew, particularly over foreign policy and symbols of sovereignty. Norwegians wanted their own consuls, their own flag. Finally, in 1905, the moment arrived. The Norwegian parliament declared the union with Sweden dissolved. It was a bold move. Thankfully, the separation was peaceful. Sweden, after some tense negotiations, recognized Norway's independence. A referendum confirmed the Norwegian people's desire for their own monarchy. Prince Karl of Denmark was invited to become king. He took the name Håkon VII, linking himself to Norway's medieval kings. A fully independent Norway was born again. Norway hoped to remain neutral when World War II erupted in 1939, just as it had in the First World War. But its strategic location and coastline proved too tempting for Nazi Germany. On April 9, 1940, German forces launched a surprise invasion. Operation Weserübung. They attacked several key Norwegian cities simultaneously. For a small, peace-loving nation, it was a brutal awakening. The Norwegian military, though fighting bravely in places, was ill-prepared for such an assault. The government and the royal family faced an immediate crisis. It was a dark day for the newly independent nation. King Haakon VII and his government made a courageous decision. They refused to bow to German demands for surrender. They rejected any collaboration with the invaders. This firm stance became incredibly important. The king and the crown prince Olav, along with key government officials, had to flee northwards. They eventually escaped to Britain. From London, they established a government in exile. King Haakon's radio broadcasts from London became a powerful symbol of hope, a beacon of resistance for the Norwegian people suffering under occupation. His note of capitulation resonated deeply. Life in occupied Norway was harsh. For 5 long years, the country endured Nazi rule. A collaborationist government was installed, led by Vidkun Quisling. His name became a synonym for traitor around the world. But the Norwegian people did not give in. A widespread resistance movement known as Milorg emerged. Ordinary citizens engaged in acts of sabotage, intelligence gathering, and civil disobedience. Famous operations like the sabotage of the heavy water plant at Vemork, crucial for Germany's nuclear ambitions, showed their determination. They paid a high price, with many arrested, tortured, or killed. Allied forces also supported the resistance. Liberation finally came on May 8, 1945. The joy was immense. But Norway was a scarred nation. Towns had been bombed, the economy was in tatters. The experience of occupation, however, had also forged a stronger sense of national unity and a determination to rebuild. Post-war Norway committed itself to international cooperation. It became a founding member of the United Nations, and later, despite its tradition of neutrality, it joined NATO in 1949. The war had taught hard lessons about security, freedom, and the importance of standing together. The nation was ready to heal and look forward. After World War II, Norway focused on rebuilding its society and economy. It was a period of sober hard work. The country relied on its traditional industries: media group, Norwegian fishing boats at sea, timber logging in Norway, Norwegian cargo ships, traditional Norwegian industry at its distribute equally, fishing, shipping, timber, and some manufacturing. It was a relatively modest, egalitarian society, not particularly wealthy on the European stage. Nobody really expected what was to come next. Then, on Christmas Eve, 1969, something incredible happened. Phillips Petroleum made a massive discovery in the North Sea. They found oil, lots of it. The Ekofisk field was just the beginning. This discovery would change Norway forever. This wasn't just a lucky break, it was the way Norway handled this newfound wealth that was truly remarkable. Many countries have struck oil and seen the money squandered, or seen it cause deep social divisions, the so-called oil curse. Norway was determined to avoid this. The government, with broad political consensus, decided on careful state-led management. They established a state oil company, Statoil, now Equinor. They implemented high taxes on oil profits. And they made it clear that the oil resources belonged to the Norwegian people, not just for now, but for generations to come. This foresight was crucial. One of the most significant decisions was the creation of the Government Pension Fund Global in 1990, often just called the Oil Fund. The idea was simple but powerful. The revenue from oil and gas wouldn't be spent immediately. Instead, it would be invested abroad. The fund would act as a long-term savings plan to secure the welfare of Norwegians long after the oil runs out. It has since grown into one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. It owns a slice of thousands of companies globally, and it operates under strict ethical guidelines, which is quite unique. This petroleum wealth transformed Norway's economy and society. It funded the expansion of an already generous welfare state, providing high-quality free education, universal health care, and strong social safety nets. It allowed for massive investment in infrastructure, and it helped maintain a high standard of living across the country, even in remote areas. Yet, Norway has tried to do this with a sense of caution, aware of the potential downsides of an oil-dependent economy. The focus has always been on long-term stability and fairness, a lesson many other resource-rich nations could learn from. So, what does Norway look like today in 2025? It's consistently ranked as one of the best places in the world to live. It boasts a strong, stable democracy, extremely high standards of living, low levels of corruption and high levels of social trust. Norwegians generally enjoy a great work-life balance. They have access to stunning nature right on their doorstep. It's a society that values equality and community. You often see it topping global indexes for happiness, human development, and gender equality. It's an impressive achievement for a country of just over 5 million people. Beyond its own borders, Norway has carved out a distinctive role on the world stage. It's known for its active engagement in peace and reconciliation efforts. Perhaps most famously, the Oslo Accords between Israel and Palestine were negotiated here in the 1990s. Norway often acts as a mediator in complex international conflicts. It's also one of the world's most generous donors of foreign aid per capita. This commitment to global peace, human rights and development is a core part of modern Norwegian identity, a long way from their Viking ancestors, you might say. Though perhaps that adventurous spirit is now channeled differently. Of course, it's not all a perfect utopia. Norway faces its own set of challenges as it looks to the future. Climate change is a big one. There's an inherent paradox in being a major oil and gas producer while also championing environmental causes. How to transition its economy is a key debate. The integration of immigrants and maintaining social cohesion are ongoing discussions, as is the question of how to sustain the expensive welfare model in the long term. And there are always debates about how the vast wealth in the oil fund should be managed and used. These are complex issues for any nation. But reflecting on Norway's incredible journey, one thing stands out: resilience. From the hardy Vikings adapting to a tough environment, through centuries under foreign rule, never losing their spirit, rebuilding after the devastation of war, and wisely managing an unexpected oil bonanza. Norway's story is one of remarkable adaptation, careful planning, and a deep-seated vision for a fair society. It shows how a small nation, through courage and foresight, can not only survive but thrive, and perhaps offer a few quiet lessons to the rest of us along the way. It's a journey that continues, and it's one I'll be watching with great interest.